So welcome. This is a little sort of training overview that we've put together to kind of go through the ins and outs of things you want to look at in managing where you are monetarily for the district. So this is a very basic overview. We're going to go into some screens and we're going to go into some reports within Infinite Visions or School ERP Pro, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to walk through these screens and how to interpret the data that you're seeing in front of you. So again, this is just the basic overview. This is meant to get you started if you've never been into some of these screens before, or to kind of remind you as to what these screens look like and how to use them and how to get useful information out of them so that you can make informed decisions going forward. Kind of running everything today is going to be Annette Moreno sitting next to me. She is going to be walking through these reports. She has a boatload of experience working at school districts and working with school districts. And she's been with our office for several years. And I hope she'll stay with our office for several years more. So Annette, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. And if you want to go ahead and start walking us through what you think would be the most useful areas to get into this program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike, for the opportunity. I always enjoy sharing what I know and just sharing with others and just kind of helping whoever needs the help. So my background is, of course, Director of Budget and Finance with Pendergast School District. So, you know, it was, I had a weekly or a biweekly or a monthly review that I would go through. And so I'm just happy to share those reports with you today and just kind of walk you through what those reports may look like. Of course, everything is customizable, so to fit anyone's needs. So that's what I'm going to do today. And I'm going to start with the general ledger reports. So we're going to go ahead and just open our general ledger program here. And we're going to go into reports. And the first one that I would like to cover today is the revenue and expenditure budget balance report. This I have found is, it's a summary roll up type of report. I like the summary only feature here. It basically is a consolidated report for all of your funds. When you run it summary only. You could do just one fund, but since it's a summary roll-up type of fund, report, usually you want to just do it summary only. So I'm going to go ahead and just run it, and so you can take a look and see the format of it. So the selection parameters are basically the from and the to date. I usually just select the full fiscal year. So back to July 1, this current year. The to date can be this current date, or it can be a future date or a previous date. I like to run just expenditures. You can do revenue accounts also. If you, again, it's a budget report. So if you're not maintaining budget amounts in your revenue accounts, I don't know how much help it will be. It will report your current year-to-date revenues if you want to see that. So I'm going to run it just for the expenditures. I'm not going to select a fund. I want to just see all the funds, and I want it to be summary, only one line per fund. So we're going to click OK here. And it will pop up in the viewer. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can get this to be a little bit bigger. So just some information. So you see that it is one line per fund. You have a fund total, and I'm just gonna zoom this back down a little bit so we can see the columns. Okay, so the columns. The first column, of course, is your budget, the budget that you have entered into Visions for each of the funds. The range to date is information, the transactions that have occurred from date to date. So whatever you set as that parameter, that is what is reported in the range to date. The year to date is what it is. It's for the fiscal date. The balance is, of course, your budget minus the year to date column is your balance. The encumbrance column is everything outstanding you have to pay. It can be payroll, accounts payable, whatever, open purchase orders, and so forth. Then the last column is your budget balance percent remaining. So you have a balance amount and then you have the percent remaining. So it's a very useful tool just to take a real quick glance. I just glance through, I look for any, funds that are in the negative, and then I'll go to other different reports to, dig in a little bit deeper of why that might be a negative. So if you scroll on down, again, it's just one line per fund. I really like the visual, the way this is laid out. I'll show you a different report in the general ledger report writer, which is a little less appealing to the eye. So I do like this report better. So I am going to show you my favorites. So this is one of my favorites, just for a weekly or a monthly review. Again, just looking through budget balances, mainly the last column. This is it, all of these reports are kind of important, and it really depends on the type of fund that you are reviewing. So we have budget controlled funds, and we also have cash controlled funds. So this would be important to run for those budget controlled funds, just taking a look, are we within the appropriate allocations? If you maintain budgets for your cash controlled funds, that's also perfectly fine, but you want to make sure it's just a double check. I'll show you the fund balance report in a little bit where you can check the cash balance for those cash controlled funds. The difference is, budget controlled, meaning the state has, there's a funding formula that you must maintain. And then the cash is just cash driven. Whatever you receive in cash is what you can spend. So just a little bit about that. Okay, so I'm going to get out of this report viewer, out of this report. I'm going to go in next to the revenue and expenditure budget balance detail report. So that is just what it says. It's a more detailed report. This report you can run against an account. You notice that the selection criteria at the top, there's an account mask. You can actually drill down onto an account, or you can just select by one of the elements. For instance, if you wanted to see just your capital accounts, you could just do that, replacing the question marks in the element that you'd like to see. For now, I am not going to do that. So put those back. Again, if you want to see, it depends on what type of detail you want to see. So you can choose your from and your to date. This is set up to just do the month, the current month. You can do a range on fund. For instance, if you wanted to see just your grant funds or the classroom site funds, I'll pick classroom site funds for this purpose. We know that there were 3 prior to this fiscal year, but now they are collapsed into 1. So I will select that. The report types, again, you can do expenditure or revenue. I normally just do expenditure, but you can certainly do revenue reporting here too. One of the key things is there you can do a page break on the fund or any other element, depending on what you have selected here in the account mask. So for this purpose, I'm going to leave it page break by fund, but you can certainly take that off if you don't want any page breaks by unselecting it. A couple of the other report options here, print accounts with 0 balance. I normally you would not want to do that. It just creates a kind of an uglier report because it's going to print, all the accounts with zero balance, which you don't really care about. Show detail. You probably do want to show your detail. And then you have the options of transaction only, encumbrance only, transactions and encumbrance. I like to see transactions and encumbrances. That shows me a true budget balance for those accounts. Include pre-encumbrance if your district or if you are actually doing pre-encumbrances, you could include them. Wrap long account titles. I don't normally do this. I'd like to see, what the full description, and it adds lines to the report. So don't normally select that. Exclude payroll encumbrances. Most of the time we're not looking at payroll type transactions here, or I don't. I like to focus in on the other transactions, but if you are, so you can exclude payroll encumbrances here, depending on what you've selected here in your account mask, or if you want to see everything, don't exclude anything. So the next item here is include inactive accounts. I would not include inactive accounts. We shouldn't be spending anything or using inactive accounts for budgeting or expenditures. So I'm going to leave that unmarked. Duplex for distribution. So there's a little extra context here. So this is going to insert a blank page upon a page break. So not sure if you would use that or not. I've never used that feature. So move expended paid to date column. I have done that. So I do select that. I'd like to move it towards I think it moves it towards the end. Change the percent used to percent remaining. I do like that. I want to see what percentage is remaining of the budget. Remove the encumbrance year-to-date column. Yes, I'll go ahead and do that depending on what I really want to see at that point in time. So remove the encumbered year-to-date column. Include the transfer account types. I have not used that feature, so I'll just leave it unchecked at this point.
So really quick before we move on here, for someone who may not be used to looking at these reports, what would be the difference between in the detail option? What is the difference between the actual transactions and the encumbrances?
So transactions are real payments. You've actually expended money, and they have, you've paid a vendor or you've paid your employee. Encumbrances are open purchase orders or commitments for future payments. So that, those are committed. Those funds are committed because you have an open purchase order that you're going to be paying a vendor, in the near future, or you have an employee that you'll be paying in the near future.
So for example, something like SRP, you may have a PO at the beginning of the year for $12,000 for SRP, but you've only paid $3,000. You still have $9,000 of encumbrance remaining on that PO because it's money that you've committed and set aside for paying that PO. What about the difference between pre-encumbrance and actual encumbrance?
So pre-encumbrance, I don't have much experience with pre-encumbrance, but so maybe you could explain a little more.
I will, Annette.
Yes.
I will, Annette. So pre-encumbrance for these reports, you're going to see two different types of pre-encumbrance. You're going to see a payroll pre-encumbrance if you choose not to exclude them. But payroll pre-encumbrances are essentially vacant positions that are still in your position inventory that maybe you haven't filled yet, or positions that are hourly, but you don't have really any hours assigned to them, which means there may be like periodic workers, like in a lot of districts, maybe that's a crossing guard who only works for maybe a couple hours every few weeks or something like that. Those are pre-encumbrances. Those are positions that you're setting aside. You're not sure whether you're going to fill them or if you're even going to be able to fill them, to be honest, at this point. But that is a payroll pre-encumbrance. For purchasing pre-encumbrance, that is an item that is sort of in as far as the whole requisitions and POs process, a payroll or a purchasing pre-encumbrance is an item that is still in a requisitioning process that has not yet been approved and turned into a PO. When it becomes a PO at that point, up until that point, it's just kind of, I mean, it sits in the GL because someone has started a requisition for $12,000. So your system kind of sets that money aside. So if you have a lot of requisitions that aren't getting approved or aren't getting moved along in a timely manner, that kind of builds up. But that's where those items come.
Mhm. Yes, thank you.
Teamwork.
Okay. I will go ahead and say okay here, and we're going to take a look at this report.
A few moments later.
Okay, so a little bit about the columns first. The original budget column is here. The amended budget is the working. Usually, I believe this is set up in your general ledger default settings. So amended budget is your original budget plus any journal entries or any changes to your original budget. The expended paid to date, that is truly what has been paid out, expended, and your year to date is, well, let's back up. Expended paid to date is, I believe, for the range for the month. The expended year to date is for your fiscal year, and then you have an unexpended budget balance and the percent remaining. So for instance, this fund 011 doesn't have any expenditures on this account, so you don't see any detail. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next account. So you notice the account here, and then the transaction detail, encumbrance detail is below the account. So it gets a little more detail. So you can just take a look at, here's all the payroll encumbrance transactions. You can see names and all the names of the employees that have open positions that have not yet been paid. You can see that they are unposted. So those are true encumbrances. It's a little, harder to read. You do have to look at, here's the account, and then the transaction detail is below the account. So, and if they had encumbrance information, it would be also below the transaction detail. Okay. So, and you just keep scrolling through. It's paged by account like we had defined report. Okay, so get out of there. We're going to close that. All right, so that's just a little bit about that report. I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and we're going to select, I'm not going to select this. I'm just going to select, let's see, I'll do like 610 here for the Fund 610 Capital. And we'll do a little bit more detail here. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of the fiscal year, and we'll just do expenditure. I'm gonna take that check mark off to remove the encumbered year-to-date column, and we'll see how that changes. Let's see, I think that's it. And we'll say, okay, we'll take a look at this report. Now, this is a non-payroll type of account, so it will look a little different. It will have purchasing encumbrance detail, give you the PO number and actual amounts for the encumbrance, open amounts. And we'll go through here. So again, here's the account number. Here's transaction details, accounts payable payments, and then any encumbrance or open purchase orders are listed next. And we wanted to see, go to the next. So we just added the one column, the encumbered year to date. So then we have a true unexpended budget balance for that specific account. Okay. And so we'll close that. And I think that is all I wanted to show for that report. So we'll go ahead and cancel out of here. And we're going to go on, we're going to move on to the fund balance report. So again, just a monthly check on fund balances. It, it's important to make sure that, yes, you are within your cash available for the cash funds, and also just kind of take a look at where are you at with your revenues, expenditures by fund. It will also tell you if your general ledger is in balance. So I like this report, and to include cash balances for each fund. When you include this, this will give you a good picture of whether your general ledger is in balance with your cash and fund balance. So I do that. And I usually just select it for the current month. You can go back to a previous month if you need to, if you're doing reconciliation or whatever it is for whatever purpose. If you have set up your fund, if you have set up fund types, you would select that here, but this does not do the fund type or has not set up the fund type. So we're going to go ahead and just say, okay, for the current month.
And for the cash balances on here, this is cash at the treasurer, and they would only see that money if we posted that money through our daily revenue processing in our office, correct?
Correct. Yes. So, a little bit more about this, what is being reported here. So we have the fund here to the left, the description. The beginning balance is the beginning balance of the fund account, the fund balance account. And that is usually rolled over from the previous year as of June 30. So that is your beginning balance as of June 30th. What is the balance in that account, that fund?
And since we have not done that fund rollover process for regional yet, that's why all of these are zero.
Mm-hmm.
Once we've completed that process, I believe the AFR is being revised, but once we've completed that process, you will see dollar amounts in there for the beginning balance, which is essentially just going to be whatever your ending balance was for that fund at the end of the year.
Yes. You have your revenue to date. That is what is recorded as revenue for each fund. You have your expense year to date. Then any transfers out or in, and then your fund balance. So this fund balance is a calculation of your beginning balance plus your revenue minus your expense plus or minus the transfers is your fund balance. Now the cash balance is actually what is the balance in the cash account for that fund. And you notice there may be a variance between the fund balance and the cash balance. So if you see a variance, that is an area that you want to dig in a little bit deeper. You want to find out why there is a variance. So you want to ask questions. There are several reasons for variances. One of the main ones is that there has been a fund balance adjustment, a journal entry that has been done to maybe the beginning balance, fund balance from the prior year. If there were adjustments in prior year, we needed to make corrections in this current year. And so that's the biggest reason that I see a variance here. The other reason there would be a variance is if you have outstanding liabilities. If you had just prepared a voucher and you haven't yet, posted the voucher or whatever the case is, it could be just the timing of when you run this report. It would be outstanding liabilities. And also, if there are liabilities, maybe that have been brought forward from a previous year, that's also a reason there would be a variance here. So it is something to look into further if you do have a variance on this report. So that is the reason you want to stay in balance. Always provide reasons or look into why there are variants on this report. And sometimes they are expected and normal. So just be aware of that. So really nice report. Again, just a monthly or weekly, biweekly review. Just kind of scroll through. Where are my cash balances? I have negative cash balances here. Again, remember that budget controlled funds, you're not really that concerned about cash balances. But certainly, most certainly your 500 range funds are your cash controlled funds. You would definitely want to have positive cash balances for those. And they are further down in the report. This is also a good report to identify inactive funds. So inactive funds, meaning there are zeros across the board. You would probably want to take a look at cleaning up those funds. And this report would be much smaller or shorter. So I think that's all about this report. Anything to add, Mike?
No, it looks good. I mean, how often would you say someone should be looking at a report like this?
Well, I did it, sometimes weekly, just to keep an eye on things. But in the normal course of, running vouchers and things like that, there's already a fund balance report that's printed, that's being checked to make sure that there's budget available for budget controlled funds, cash available for the cash controlled funds when you're doing vouchers. But as a director of finance or a business manager, yeah, weekly, at least monthly.
Okay.
Yeah, just to keep on top of it. Just checking revenues. Yeah, they look normal. They're not in a fund that it shouldn't be in. Things like that, things to correct.
So you're looking for money where there shouldn't be money.
Yes.
And then it definitely not money where you would expect money to be.
Exactly.
Okay.
You want to make sure everything's appropriately recorded. So, yep. Okay. So that's the fund balance report. All right. So on to the next. So I think I'm going to skip down here to this Arizona Grants Management Report. So this report is run by fund. I mean, you can select several funds. I normally would not select several funds when I run the report for the reason of just usually you're running it for the grants and to do a grant, either a completion report or a reimbursement request, something to do with the grants. So I always probably do, select one fund. So for this purpose, I think I'm going to select 100. So you would select your fund, you select your from and to date. Usually if you're working with grants, this would be your project start date and project end date. You can do current fiscal year only. If you do not select this, it will cross fiscal years. It will go back to the prior year and pull in expenditures. So this is a really good report for our GME reporting.
Yeah,
It's required.
Yeah.
Basically.
I want to make sure to hammer that
Yes.
home. This is one of the few reports that you will find in this application that actually crosses fiscal year. So right now we're in fiscal year 23. And if you had like a grant that was 15 months or something, longer than a normal 12 months, and maybe you have a grant that ends September 30th, then what you could do is you could actually come in here, you put a from date from say 7/1/2021 to September 30, 2022, and it would go back into last fiscal year, pull all the data for that particular fund and consolidate it with the data in this fiscal year and put it all together in one big report. Extremely useful when you have long grants that go on longer than 12 months or don't end at the normal July or the June 30th date. if you leave that box unchecked.
Mhm. Perfect example is the ESSER, ESSER grants. So last year, we were able to actually change this from date to, March 13th, which is when it was started, March 13th of 2020. And you could actually pull in a report in your FY21 fiscal year that would include all of those expenditures way back to that date. So really, it is a great function here. Definitely needed. So for those grants that cross fiscal years. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of my ESSER funds. So So, and I will not select a current fiscal year. So I'm going to do 336, I think is that's ESSER 2. And I'm not going to select current year only. So it's going to pull in all the expenditures from 7/1 of 21. And we just say, okay. Again, this is a roll up type of report. If you have your budget envisions the way that it is approved with GME, then you will be able to identify lines that may need an amendment, depending on your spending in those various lines. So I'm going to just zoom in on that. So here we are. You have your budget, so it may look familiar. In GME, you have your coding by function and then by object. So you can easily identify lines that may need an amendment here. So you would definitely want to take a look at any of those budget, those accounts that have a budget balance, a negative budget balance. So very nice visual check on grant funds and other funds. You can certainly use it for all the other funds, not only for grant funds, but it was designed for our grants management enterprise with the Department of Ed. So, okay, so that's very useful. All right, we're gonna get out of there. Okay, I'm gonna jump into the general ledger report writer just quick here. So you may have a lot of different reports already defined. I'm just going to go into one that I have been working with, these three at the top here. So budget and expense report. So I'm going to open this. There's a couple ways to run reports. So one of the ways you can define a report is to do roll up, the detail level of none. And this, when we look at this definition and we see these zeros in all of the elements, that is rolling up. That's collapsing the mask, rolling up. So we should see this report will be very short, rolled up. You won't see detail accounts. So couple of ways to run the report. So I'm going to run this report by going to actions and print this report when you're in the edit mode. To print a report, again, if you, depending on if you want to see just a monthly report, you can leave the from and to date to the current month. You can go back to a different month if you'd like, or you could just change this to the fiscal year, beginning July 1. And this report, I'm going to print a GL report. Since it's a roll-up report, I don't need to worry about the filter encumbrance detail by date range or the detail level. So I'm just going to say okay here. And this is going to give a roll-up by funds. One line per fund. Kind of like what I explained in the revenue and expenditure budget balance report earlier. So this is just a different look and feel. It just looks busier than the other report. Like I said, the other report was my favorite. But this is the same information. You have a GL budget, you have a range to date, which is your from and to date at the top, and you define that. Then your year to date, that's fiscal year to date, transactions. Then you have your balance. The encumbrance column is here. Again, that's open commitments, open purchase orders, or payroll, employees to pay in the future. And then you have your budget balance, your true budget balance, and the percent of budget available. Okay, so again, just one line for each fund, a quick visual of where am I at with all of my funds. Do they have a budget balance? Is it negative? Is it positive? How much more can I spend? So it's a 2-pager. So really quick and easy. Okay, so we're going to go on out of this report. I'm going to cancel here. So that was, I actually was in the edit mode when I double clicked on this report. You can actually go in, if you know that there is a report you want to run, it's defined perfectly for you. You can simply just highlight it in this grid, go to actions and print selected report, and it will do the same thing. It will pull up this nice screen where you can define or tell the system what information you want to print. So again, print GL report, change your dates if you'd like to, and just say, okay, print. This time I left the date just November. So the month to date column will look different and will not be the same as the year to date column information. So the range to date is just for the November transactions, and the year to date is fiscal year to date. Again, gives you the same budget balance because it's looking at the year to date.
So before we jump out of this report, I just want to go over, for someone who maybe has not been in Infinite Visions very often in the report viewer, I just kind of want to walk through really quick some of the items that you have available to you. So up at the very top toolbar, which we call the ribbon, the top ribbon. So you have the option, of course, to print reports. You can have multiple reports open up on the same screen. You do print all, and it would send it all to whatever your default printer is. There's 2 Excel options. There's an Excel document where it takes essentially the formatting of this report and just puts it in Excel. It still requires some cleanup to do. It's not pretty, but it's functional. There is an Excel data option, which will actually export out the data that built this report into an Excel spreadsheet for you. So if you want to rework it, or if you want to run some formulas and see how things work, you can do that. There's a PDF document where if you just want to save it as a PDF to a local drive or something like that. There's also a couple you can export to RTF, text, HTML. No one uses that. But the other option is the send attachment down at the very end there. So that will actually, if you go ahead and click that, what it will do is it will just pop up a little box, and you can put in an email address or pick somebody that you want to send it to, and it will send them a copy of this report right out of the system. So you don't have to save it or do anything. So we find this useful if you're out like on the road or something like that, or maybe you're using a tablet or something to see, and you don't have access to a printer. It's always good to be able to either email it to you or somebody else, or save it as a PDF, so you can go back and look at that data later without having to run the same reports over and over again. All right, and that's it.
And that is true throughout Visions. So anytime, any reports, all of these options are available. Even in the grids, when you're, the export to Excel from grids, any of the data, that's just a wonderful option. Okay, so we're gonna close out of here. So there were just a couple of other reports here, just examples, really. This is an example of a more detailed report. You see that the collapse mask is open as far as it's all question mark. And I've selected all elements here. So, but what I have done here is on the object, actually selected only capital. So the objects 67, oops, further, just 6,700 has been selected. So we'll just see a report on just our capital accounts by fund. So I have selected all funds and I've subtotaled by fund. So nice report just to run, to take a look, where am I at with my capital budgets? So we'll go ahead and just do actions print here. And I will leave the range to date alone. I'm going to print my GL report. Okay, so this is, again, just capital account codes, gives you your general ledger budget, your range to date transactions, year to date transactions, your balance, and your budget balance. So this is a more detailed report. Again, you can see specific account codes. And if you needed to, you could, dig in a little bit deeper. I'll show you in a few minutes how to dig into one of these account codes to find out, maybe why are we spending on that, or what did we spend in that account code? It may be coded incorrectly or whatever the case may be. But again, just review it, check to see any negative budget balances, what possibly could be going on. The budget's just in a different line or different account code, and that's perfectly fine. It just depends on what the fund is and so forth. So this is 2-pager, not a whole lot of capital here. So just a quick status of where am I at with my capital accounts. Again, you can do all this, print, Excel, all those options. Okay. And the last one I'm going to show is the budget and expense for M&O. So I often would run this. Just, it is rolling up to program and function and object. What's important about M&O is, of course, you want to be checking for your expenditures by program. So by law, you should not be over expending by program in the M&O fund. It does require board approval to expend over the adopted budget by program. So this report is, again, we see regular education, program 100, which is the second element in the account code string. We have functions and then by the objects. So I'm going to go to the next page. And by program. So here we have program. It's a little bit here. So we have program regular education. So I just would do a quick check. Are we good with all of our programs? Regular education looks good. Budget balance is positive. Special education is positive, and pupil transportation is positive. And then the bottom line, grand total, positive. We're good. We are not overexpended. But again, you can kind of take a look at detail lines if you'd like, but those are the most important, is by program and by function. So you can, highlight or whatever you want to do to go dig in a little deeper for those lines that may be over budget. It just depends on your level of budget control and how you're managing your budget. Okay. All right, so that's that report. All right, that's all I wanted to cover in general ledger. All right, so how do we look at some more detail by account? So we're going to close the reports menu and we're going to go into transaction inquiry. So you can actually drill down into account detail and also journal detail also, but I'm going to show you the account detail. So here you can actually filter down on a specific account. You can filter down on just elements. So right now I'm going to filter in on 336 ESSER money. I want to look at just my instructional function, instructional expenditures, and I don't have to select any other element. If you choose an account type of expenditure, it should just pull up those your expenditure accounts by your account filter of 336 and the 1000 function. Okay, so I'm gonna go here and my little menu is apply selection. So this is showing you all the accounts with this account filter, which you can drill down in. So again, what Mike mentioned earlier, there's always a function called export to Excel. So if you were really, good at Excel and you wanted to play with the data a little bit, or just simply put it in a different format, you could download this to Excel and do just that. You could do charts and whatever it is you would like to do. So, but this is account details. So what I would like to show you is the drill down feature of this. So in an account, say you want to look at this account because you notice that its budget balance is in the negative. So I want to say, what's going on there? What did we spend here that may be miscoded, or I need to put budget there, move budget around. So again, you just double click on the account and here is your transaction journal. You can look at purchase encumbrance, which is the open purchase orders. Right now it says a 0, so that tells me that it is closed. There are no open purchase orders. And if it was a payroll code, you could see payroll encumbrance. But transaction journal, again, you can drill down. You can open up this account for this information. Actually, I'm going to just show you this one really quick. You can't actually, this is as far as we would go with the transaction journal, but there is this drill down feature when there are elements in the transaction that are in blue. So the voucher number is in blue, PO number is in blue. You can actually drill down into those items. So if I double click on the PO number, I can actually see what is on that purchase order. I can view the purchase order detail. I can see, I know how it was coded, but you can see more detail about that line item. Okay, so we can just cancel there. And same with the voucher number. PO number is most important when you're looking at transactions in here. You can look at the check too, but it's probably not going to give you a whole lot of information. PO number is probably going to give you the most information when you're looking at transactions here. Okay, so that's a little bit about view account detail, just drilling down on really what's happening in a specific account. Okay, a little more about this screen here. So whatever you filter on here is it will summarize the information at the bottom here, your totals box down here. So you see the budget amount, you have a year-to-date transaction and an unexpended budget balance. Over here to the middle is an encumbrance total, which means, of course, the outstanding purchase orders. And then a true budget balance. So you would take this unexpended budget balance minus the encumbrance is your budget, your true budget balance. If you were doing the pre-encumbrance or the pending invoices, again, there's another uncommitted budget balance total. So this really is the number over here to the far right that you would be looking at as far as the what is currently shown on the grid, the account filter that you used. So if you wanted to just see, I just want to see all of Fund 336 and the expenditures. That's going to give me a total uncommitted budget balance for my ESSER 2 fund. So this is really a quick and easy way to go into one fund and see where is my budget balance rather than running a report. And that's how I mostly used it. So what else? Is there anything I missed or any other shortcuts?
I think for now that kind of answered a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I know when we kind of got into the room and we were in there with some regional admins and we were talking, the number one concern that came up is I wish I knew how much money we had. I wish I knew, how much money was available and what we spent. So these screens tell you exactly that. So if you want to know how much ESSER 2 money we have, you are literally 3 clicks away from getting into your uncommitted budget balance. You have $1,009,000 of ESSER 2 money still left for the year or until that closes out. So those are easy ways to do that. Again, but these are not things that you want to, these are things you want to set aside time to go in regularly. Where am I at? Where am I spending money? Where are these, are there things that are happening that are adjusting this in ways that I didn't anticipate? This is how you keep track at an upper level, at that 20,000 foot level to make sure that you're not going to end up running into a problem later down the line as we get closer to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Just keeping in mind too that it does take a lot of time to manage the budget and visions and keep up to date with all of the grant amendments and whatever else, so just keeping in mind that, yeah, we want to make sure that all the budgets are what have been approved and just keeping up with that. So you do have the most accurate information when you're doing reports and looking in, in this area for any kind of detail.
Right. So really quick, let's go take a look at the budget. Let's say I wanted to take a look at what is my budget, regardless of what the transactions are. So let's poke into a couple different places really quick before we call it a day here. So let's go into the general ledger default settings. And that's going to be in general ledger under configuration and the GL default settings. And this is where we kind of set the basics up for what's going on at your district. So I want to draw your attention to that little section where all those drop downs there right in the middle, where it has the budget information. You have a prior year column, an adopted, and a working column, working, balance, and propose. What we're really looking at is we are looking at the working and the balance column. Those are typically going to be set to the same column. And when I say column, think of it as like you have an Excel spreadsheet and you have all the numbers on there. This is my budget for the year. That is what a budget column is in this program. So you have different budget columns. So you'll have a working budget. This is the last one that was adopted. And then if you do a revision, you'll create another column for a revision. If you do a second revision, you'll create another column for that revision. So this is how you can tell us that, all right, I know that for my district, I am working with what's called the working budget. That's the working column. So if we cancel out of here and let's go into budgeting. And budget input is usually the easiest place. In most you have a handful of districts that use budget journal entries. Not a fan. Budget input is usually kind of my favorite place in here. So we're going to come in here and we're going to take a look here. So we have an account filter. So let's put in our SR2 money, our SR2 fund, sorry. And we want to make sure our editable column is set to working. So you can have up to 3 different budget columns here. So if you want to look at my proposed versus my adopted versus my revision, you can set that up here and see them all on one screen. But for this, we're just going to take a look at ESSER, and let's take a look at expenditures.
Okay. Mhm.
Yep. And then we'll go ahead and apply selections. So this is going to show all my budgeted line items for this particular fund. So if I take a look and say, see that first one with that 3163 in there. So we can actually open that up and drill down into that a little bit. So I know I've budgeted for this particular account $3,163. I do have budget detail in here, which means someone's gone in here and kind of broken it out as to exactly what that budget amount comes from. Depending on how detailed you want to get in your budget, you could actually see a lot of line items in here. But your end budget for this account is going to be 3163. So if I know I needed to make an adjustment for this budget, what I could do is I can come in here and I can adjust that detail line if it was approved, or I've gone through all those processes and make sure that I've either moved budget from another account somewhere, or I've something has happened during my revision, or I've had changes that caused me to do a revision, so I can make changes to my budget detail. I can come in here and in that detail line in there where it says furniture and equipment, I can actually adjust that budget amount to match what it actually will be my new budget amount. So that's how I look at the raw budget. It doesn't show me the transactions in here. It just shows me the dollar amount. But if I hit cancel, and on this box, there is under the filter criteria, there's a little checkbox that says show current transactions. I hit that and hit apply selection again. So I will now actually see the transaction dollar amounts for all these. So for example, I see that working transactions 17,430 are about 5 lines down. So I have $17,000 worth of transactions on that line. I don't have any particular budget tied to that line. There may or may not be a bad thing, depending on how I want to roll that money up. But I can see where I had anticipated spending the money versus where I actually spent the money. And just like some of the other screens you see down at the bottom, you see some totals in there. You see a working dollar amount all the way down at the bottom of the screen where it says budget total. So I see the 1.145 million for the working budget. The 0 in there is for FTEs. I'm not budgeting any FTEs or full-time equivalency positions in this particular fund. And then over on the right-hand side, I have my year-to-date transactions plus the encumbrance. So that's an easy way where I can take a look at where I am. Another way I can take a look budget-wise by account code. Where have I set aside my money? That way I know that when I'm looking at those reports and I'm looking at, hey, what's my budget at? Oh, that budget is incorrect. This is where I would come in and fix that information. Okay. All right. Anything else you can think of? I don't want to blow people's heads up.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think that's good.
All right. So this has been essentially, if this were a college course, this would be your 101. And this would be the first week and a half of your budgeting or your general ledger 101 class. So if there was something that you want to drill into more, or something you have more questions about, or something else that you want to see, let us know. We will put something together for you. That way you can go in here and you can make informed decisions about where your district stands and where your district wants to go. That way, we want to make sure that you're fiscally, not only just fiscally responsible, but fiscally literate enough to kind of go in here. How do I get the information that I want to? That way you don't have to go and you don't have to ask somebody else for information. You have the ability, if you're watching this video, you have good chances, you have the ability to get into these same screens. And for the most part, there's a lot of ways in here that you can pull data out that we didn't cover today. And my advice to people that are normally getting in here or have not been in here a lot, just go in there and reports and just start running reports until you find something that you like, until you're familiar enough with it and the data that it's looking at. Say, hey, this report is useful for me. Annette went through reports that are really very, very common at other school districts to be used on a weekly, monthly basis to get a snapshot of where they are. But until you get in there and you get really familiar with how do I run this report or how do I do a general ledger report, write a report, there are other resources that we have available that we can kind of help you with, throw your way if you have questions. But either way, let us know. We are more than happy to help. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Good.
Thanks for sitting down with us. Now you can go ahead and stop the video and rewind it to a part that's favorite for you. All right. Thank you.